little yarnivores and spiderettes, Fiber Spider, back again with another review slash tutorial just for you. And today I'm going to show you, this is Bernat Alize, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it is Blanket Easy. And I tell you, this stuff is a lot of fun to work with. And the interesting thing about it is that you can stitch like a pro, but you don't need any crochet hooks or any knitting needles. Yeah, how's that for interesting? Because this yarn is composed of loops. Lots and lots of loops. And to give you the lowdown, it is a jumbo weight of 7, and it is, oddly enough, it is only 18 yards. So you don't get a tremendous amount of yardage, but it does, however, create an absolutely gorgeous knit look piece. So this is the front side, and this is the back side, and it is so soft and squishy. Yes, that is my own word, squishy. The texture is to die for. Absolutely love the fuzziness. It's almost like finger knitting with Muppet fur, it's so luscious. It's got a lovely texture. When you do work up the piece, you can get your fingers through there, but it is, pretty dense. I will say that it's not super open and lacy and so forth. It makes a substantial fabric to it. And now this is, in essence, this is Stockinette. However, I did a little bit of experimenting, and yes, you can do garter as well using this yarn. I rather like it. I found it very, very simple to work with. The fact that you don't need hooks or needles or any sort of tools I thought was really interesting. Very, very, very easy to work with. One little thing that I did not care for this project. Now, I wanted to make a nice-sized blanket for myself. This took 6 skeins at when I bought this. It was $11.99 per skein. So, yes, the price is a bit of a deterrent, I will be the first to admit. However, you get what you pay for, in this particular instance. Granted, the yardage is not tremendous, but the texture, the ease, and the novelty of the loops, I thought it was really great. So there is a bit of a balancing act. If you want to do a sizable piece, I would say wait for a coupon or a sale or something. Fortunately, I did have a 25% off coupon off of my entire purchase. That really helped. Otherwise, I would not be able to afford this. So for a decent-sized blanket, you are going to need, roughly half a dozen skeins. If you want something smaller, like a baby blanket, then, you would need, fewer skeins, naturally. This also could be lovely done as a scarf or a cowl. You could conceivably do increases or decreases so that you could go in a shawl shape. However, this is pretty heavy. Personally, I think it would be too heavy for a rather large garment, but by all means, experiment, have fun. Would I recommend this? Definitely. Would I be remiss to say, oh, it's totally affordable? No, it is rather expensive, even by my standards. So, again, weighing out the pros and the cons. Would I buy this again? Only if it's on sale, only if I have a decent coupon. Otherwise, it's out of my bracket. But that being said, let's get into how you actually work with this yarn. Enough of my ramblings. And by the way, no, I'm not sponsored. I did not get any compensation to say what I've been saying. This is my personal, transparent, totally honest opinion of this product, which I do like. I'm just not crazy about the price considering how much yardage you get. So, it balances out. All right, so without further ado, let's do a little tutorial part. Okay. All right, so already took off my wrapper. Now, this is a kind of skein in which trying to find the center and pull from the center, good luck with that. Considering there isn't that much yardage, I would say just pull from the exterior of the skein and work from it that way. It'll be a lot easier. And frankly, it's not my favorite way of working from a skein, but, you know, it's a lot easier than trying to find the inside, trust me. So you can see that the yarn is composed of a lot of loops, and it's really, really fuzzy. Like I said, it's like working with, Muppet hide. Absolutely love this stuff. Now, I do see here, got a bit of a little boo-boo right there in the yarn, but that's okay. We're going to cut that right off, no problem. Also, you're going to want a pair of nice, fine, sharp scissors when preparing this. Basically, what we need is a length of yarn without the loops because we need to sew in the ends, right? So, very carefully, now if you look, I know this is really difficult to see, but if you look, you can see that there is a division. If you get beyond the fuzz, there's a division where the loops connect to themselves. So if you scoot in between, real careful like, and cut, you now have a little bit of a tail. I like to cut, maybe 3 to 5 loops so that you have enough yarn. See, I got a little bit more, but I always like a nice substantial tail to work with, always, regardless of whether it's fuzzy yarn or otherwise. See, right now, yes, I have enough of a tail, so I can sew that into my work later, no problem. All right, now for the piece that I did, I started with, instead of chains or cast-on stitches on knitting, you're just counting the number of loops that you want for the width of your piece. For the piece that I did a total of 60 loops. So I counted 60 of these loops all the way across, and then that's when you start going back in the opposite direction. All right, so for this, I'm going to do, say, 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, on the instructions on the label right here, it said about 50 for a baby blanket, so I went 60, and it lays across my bed nicely. So after your 10, and you grab that 10th, and you hang on to that one, and basically it's just going to be a matter of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, without turning your work. If you want stockinette, if you want garter, you would turn your work, and I'm going to show you the difference. So basically, this is my 10th loop, and then I find it easier if you reposition the yarn going in the direction that you want it. So this is my initial length, and my working yarn holding it in the back. All right, so this is my 10th loop, going and grabbing my next loop and pulling it from the back, going from the back to the front, and you pull up that loop. It's as easy as that, and we're just going to be doing that over and over and over and over and over, okay? So I pulled up that loop. Let me do that again for you. So that's my 10th, and then taking the next loop, pulling it through and up. Then taking the next loop, and granted, the foundation row is the most fiddly, I will grant that. So we have the next loop on our foundation, and then the next loop of our working yarn. Take that loop through the back to the front and up, like so. So now we've got 2. And I know this is probably not translating very well on camera because it is so fuzzy, and it's a very, very tactile sort of project that we're doing here. So then this is the working yarn, this is my foundation, taking the loop, pushing it through the back and up, pulling up that loop, and then going on to the next one, from the back to the front, pull up that loop. So you can see these light ones are our new loops that we're going to be working with. And then also be careful that you don't miss a loop. Be careful, keep that in mind. So here's my next working loop going through the next base chain loop. Also, another thing is I'm not doing this flat. It does help if you work flat, I will say that. You know, see if I can do this way. See, here's my foundation, and here's my working yarn. You know, going on to the next loop of my foundation, grabbing the next loop from my working yarn, pulling it through the back and up. Next loop on the foundation, taking one from the working yarn, pulling it up and through. Also, I was very paranoid that the loops were going to come undone. I really didn't have that problem. So, foundation, pulling up that working yarn up and through. And then I've got one more loop. So, pulling up that last loop. And that is one row completed. And then we can sew this in to the back later, no problem. So then for the second row, very simple. To do that, you take your yarn and you put it into the opposite way in which, you know, it needs to go in this direction, so it's easier if you just lay it in that direction. So here is my last loop pulled through. Then you take the next loop on your yarn and you grab it, pull it through, and then finding my next one. Once you get some fabric going, it really works a lot faster than this, trust me. So this is my last loop made, going on to the next loop that I made from the last row. And you pull up a loop through there. And then go to the next one and pull up a loop through, always from the back to the front. And then the next, from the back to the front. And pulling up another loop. Also, like I said, be sure and careful that you don't miss one, because then you have to undo your work, and that can be kind of annoying. You know, because if you miss one, I'm going to show you what happens. If you miss one, all of a sudden you end up with a hole and a loop that doesn't have a partner. You know, he's all alone. That's no good. So, and also it's very easy to pull out your loops. However, I will say this, you don't want to pull out your loops by grabbing your working yarn. No, you want to do it manually. You know, you want to pull it out like that. Otherwise, you risk damaging your yarn, and you don't want to do that. So I just got a couple more. And then my next row will be done. It's really, really, really that easy to work this yarn. It really is. And the funny thing is that after working with this yarn and then working with Pound of Love, which is a baby yarn, it's really soft, that felt coarse and rough in comparison. All right, so that is another row done. It's really that easy. And I love the colors. You know, even though it's an absence of color, it's grays. I love the color way. How about that? And then on the back, you can see the pearl bumps, if you will. So I'm going to do this a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you how you can alter it. All right, so moving right along, we're going to do another row or so. All right, now this was the last loop that I pulled up through, and basically you're just grabbing your next one available on your working yarn, pulling it up and through, and then it's always from the back to the front, pulling it up and through. Also, I was concerned, what if these loops are twisted? You know what? I really did not notice any issue or problem. Granted, I would say try to keep them not twisted, but all in all, I really didn't have an issue with that in any way. So I wouldn't concern myself too terribly much with that. Now, at no point so far have I turned the work. However, and that is to achieve, a stockinette kind of stitch here, because you have all the V's. It's difficult to see them, but, you have these V stitches, that's one leg and that's the other leg. You do have V's. So it is sort of like stockinette. Now, if you want to achieve the garter stitch look, instead of going back in the opposite direction, what you would do is go immediately to flipping the work and then continue on. Now, it's a little bit tricky because your loops are facing away from you instead of toward you. So that can be a little bit tricky, but you can see my loops there up at the top, these little guys. And so basically what I'm going to be doing now is instead of going back this way, I'm going to keep going in the left to right fashion, or if you ended on the other way, right to left. So basically, again, going from the back to the front. And right now it's oriented where it's toward the front. Well, I need to have my yarn in the back so I can keep doing back to front. And this is going to create a pearl bump on the opposite side. If you are a knitter, which you don't have to be working with this yarn, but if you're a knitter, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm doing the exact same thing. It's just that I turned my work. Just pulling from the back to the front and up. It's really that easy. And it won't become obvious as far as the texture and look of garter right away. After a couple of rows, you're like, oh, I see the garter stitch there. It doesn't happen right away, but when it does, you'll see what I mean. So I finished a row. Now you turn the work again and make sure that your yarn is toward the back. So you see this ridge right here? That is a ridge of pearl bumps. Okay. So then again, with my yarn in the back, got my last loop made, and next loop on the working yarn from the back to the front. And got my next loop, so from the back to the front and up. Also, this is, I would say, if the child has the patience for crafting, not everybody does, and that's okay, but if a child has the patience for crafting and enough eye-hand coordination, then I would totally recommend this for a child. because they'll get a great sense of satisfaction and of accomplishment doing this kind of a project. And you don't have to worry, about any, sharp tools or noxious chemicals or anything like that. This is a great craft, unlike so many out there. And this is certainly a lot neater than making, slime, which I know is the rage for a lot of kids, but this is a lot neater. All right, so right now you can see this ridge right here, and we're going to be creating ridges as we go along if you decide to keep going on in the garter stitch fashion. But, if you want that sort of ribbed look, which is a lovely texture, you can keep going on in this fashion. And then, so I finished that row, so you're basically, again, turning the work, and with the yarn in the back, keep going, in the exact same way. It's really that easy. And then one more thing left to show you, and that's how to bind off, which is just as easy. If any of you have made pot holders and used a pot holder loom, it really is almost identical to the kind of bind off that you would do if you made pot holders. It's pretty much the same thing for this kind of yarn, because again, you're dealing with loops. All right, and I just have one more. And there we go. That is another row done. So you can see, got a ridge here and another ridge here. And then on the other side, we have a ridge here and one here. So, excuse me, if you want to create more of a ridged texture, you can do that as well. You're not limited to just one or the other. You can do either, I wouldn't suggest doing both on the same project. I would say, go one or the other, especially if it's like for a blanket. But hey, to each their own. March to the beat of your own bongo, definitely. So now I'm going to do a couple more rows so it'll be easier to work with for me. And then I'm going to show you how to do the bind off. All right. All right, so I did a couple more rows after I was working on my garter. Now you can see the ridges a little bit easier right now. I have two ridges on this side from when I was doing the garter. So if this is the kind of texture that you're going for, hey, by all means, no problem. If not, well, you can have this more homogeneous bumpiness on one side and then the smoothness on the other, either or. Now, when you have stitched, I'm using the term loosely because you're not using any tools. When you have created enough fabric to your liking, it's wide enough and it's long enough. Now, then you can do your bind off. Now, basically, what it amounts to is to do the bind off. I finished my last row, and then imagine, if you will, that this length coming out of here, you only have, like this much left or so. What you would do is you would cut these remaining loops, okay? And you're going to use that tail to sew in your ends. However, we need to deal with these loops first, okay? And it's really not that difficult. What it amounts to is keeping in mind that my tail is on this side. If your tail is on this side, do it in the exact opposite fashion, all right? Basically, here's my little end loop here, and you take the one next to it, all right, and put this loop through the end loop, and you pull it through, and then you go into the next loop and pull it through that last loop. And you're sort of creating a chain edge here. And then you take the next loop, put it through the end loop, pull it on up. And then the next one through the one that you just made. and you work your way down the line in the exact same way, just taking the next loop to go, putting it through the last one, and you create this really easy, nice edge for your piece. So I just got a couple more to go. Also, another thing that I will say is that typically when doing the stockinette stitch in knitting, it has a wicked tendency of curling. I did not have that issue with this at all. I really didn't. Very, 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 very slight curling on the edges. Other than that, it did lay flat. So that's really not a concern. All right, and then got these 2 loops left. Now, what you would do is, since you only have the 2 loops left, what I did was actually I undid this last loop, okay? So I pulled out that last loop and I cut in between, to free up this loop. Just like I showed you before, you would cut in between here, and then, so this, imagine this is loose yarn and it's not connected. Pull this up to create a loop and pull this through your last loop, and then it'll be free. And again, like I said, imagine, if you will, because I don't want to cut this. I want to use this for a different project. So all of these loops would be not looped. It would just be a straight bit of yarn, and then you can pull that up, and then you can sew that into the back of the piece. It's really as easy as that, and it works up super fast, and I rather like the product. The only gripe that I have with this yarn is the price. It's not, it's really not frugal. It's not very affordable. It is absolutely luscious, and I really like it, but it is an expense. So take my opinion, my review for what you will. If this is something that you can afford, I would totally say go for it. I really liked it. Just be sure that you end up purchasing enough. And in that case, I would say buy more than you think you're going to need. And if you don't use it, return it. Just hang on to your receipt and return what you don't end up using. Because also this yarn, in particular, does have dye lots, and you want to be careful of that. And since I happen to have the label handy, okay, so basically these numbers, not the barcode number, but these numbers are the dye lots, specifically the 161037. That is, I believe, that is the dye lot, or that is the colorway, and then this would be the dye lot. I'm not a professor or expert on dye lots because they're usually positioned in different places, but you do want to make sure that you get the same dye lot. Now, my guess is that 2018, yes, that is the year at the moment. And then, so this would be the batch and then the lot. So you want to make sure that the numbers are the same. So if you buy half a dozen and they're all different lots, you're going to notice the difference. The darks may not be as dark on some as on others, or vice versa. So you want to be careful of that. Be sure you buy enough. And then, if you don't use it, you could always return it. Just be sure to hang on to that receipt, and then no harm, no foul. All right. So, as always, I really hope that you found this review/tutorial helpful, informative, and enjoyable, because I love doing them for you. And besides, this yarn is so squishy. I could work with this for days. It's so much fun. So if you did find this, this video helpful, please give me a little thumbs up button down below. I would really appreciate it, because I appreciate your appreciation. And also, I do try to post as often as I can, whether it's knitting, crocheting, audiobook narration. So please hit subscribe, so that you too will be in the know. And then also, of course, I do have my other YouTube channel, Fiber Spider Games, where I do video gameplay and commentary. It's a lot of fun, and I would love to see you there too. most definitely. And what a day. So all of you, I want you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, and above all, stay stitching. And I need more caffeine right now. I'm pooped. So until next time, I hope you have a great, great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.